Hello everyone, welcome back to another card combo show with me, Chocobilly. We are fully into Opus 23 now, and there are some fun cards to be looking at. But I'm going to be starting with the first legend, I believe, in Fire, which is a 5CP 5k Fire Terror. So her text is EX Burst. When Terror enters the field or is put from the field into the break zone, choose one summon in your break zone. Add it to your hand. During this turn, the cost required to cast your next summon is reduced by 2. It cannot become 0. And then all summons in your break zone cannot be removed from the game by opponent summons or abilities. So there's quite a bit going on there. The fact that it's EX Burst is really, really nice. It has both entry and leaving the field, put from field break zone effects, and then it has a standard passive as well to stop summons from being removed from your break zone. There are a few caveats to that which I'll go over in the episode, but ultimately a pretty strong card. So first up, let's just kind of deal with the fact that its effect can be stacked. So, before that, I want to talk about this card, Ifrit. So obviously if a 5/4 has entered your field this turn, the cost required to cast Ifrit is reduced by 3. So you could play Terror onto the field and then free cast Ifrit. However, if you let Terror enter the field, her entry effect will resolve, you then cannot free cast Ifrit, because Terror states that the cost can be reduced by 2 but cannot become 0. That means Ifrit now cannot become 0, so you'd have to pay 1 for it, ironically. So if you were grabbing this Ifrit with this Terror, it would then cost you 1, not 0. Unless you cast another summon whose cost would be reduced, and then you would go back to not having that minus or up to 0 effect. And yeah, you see where I'm going with this. Ultimately, just be mindful of this guy. So, Brynhilda, or just any card where Terra can kill herself, is kind of interesting, because what you can do is you can play Terra onto the field and choose a summon in your break zone. Now, the -2 effect on the cast of the next summon only happens upon resolution, which is the summon comes back to your hand and then the ability is resolved. So what you can do is play Terror onto the field and then kill her with another summon. Or with anything, really. But Brynhilda is the example I'm using here because it gets you a card to hand as well. So you play Terror onto the field, choose a summon, kill her with Brynhilda before her entry effect is resolved, which then gets put from the field into the break zone. You can then get a summon back to hand through her leave the field effect as well, which could be the Brynhilda you just did. So you'd get Brynhilda back to hand, you'd get a card from killing Terra with Brynhilda, and then you'd get the original summon back to hand. That would stack both her entry and her leave the field effect, and this is going to sound a lot like the old Faris Water Fire legend, where you could stack the entry effects to make it so that a warrior of like cost like -7 or something. It would mean that your next summon could be basically -4. Now again, bear in mind the fact that it cannot become 0, so if you were casting a 4-cost summon, it would still have to have 1 paid, but it means you can cast 5-cost summons. You know, lots of fun things like that. Ifrit is another good example as well with Terror, because obviously Brynhilda you get card to hand, but you still have to pay the 2, and obviously the Brynhilda out of hand, whereas Ifrit you can just pay the 1 instead, and it means you can do a 5k to Terror and 5k to another thing, depending on how far you are in the game, how many characters you've got. Just bear in mind that obviously, you know, if you're killing your own Terror and you're counting that within the Ifrit cast, sometimes you kill her, there aren't 5 anymore, so then the other one fizzles, so yeah, just bear that in mind. Now, obviously, Phoenix would be a good card to get back for the Terror. As I mentioned before, obviously it would still be cost 1, but still being able to pay 1 CP for a 2-cost to the, or 2k to the board, and then bring something onto the field as well is actually pretty decent with Terror. And I mean, there are lots of good summons within Fire, but they all kind of do the same sort of thing. Phoenix is one of those few outliers which actually does something additional as well, which is nice. So yeah, being able to get the Phoenix and play it for only 1 CP, and, you know, kind of doing this amongst your opponent's turn as well is really good, because it could be your opponent's turn, they're trying to do something, maybe they're trying to cheat something onto the field, they're attacking with something, you respond by Ifrit, choose a forward they control, and then also choose your Terror, kill your Terror, get back a Phoenix, cast Phoenix for -2, bring out something else. So, you know, being able to kill your own Terror during your opponent's turn as well is actually quite fun. And yeah, Magic Pop. So I mentioned that you could stack the entry and the leave. How about you do the entry and the leave with another entry? So you get -6 on the next summon you cast as well. So Terror enters the field, you use Magic Pop, Terror into the break zone, you then bring out and search another of this Terror, play onto the field. So you get to get 3 different summons from your break zone. Make sure you have enough summons in there, and then also you get -2 times 3, so -6 on your next summon as well. Again, can't become 0, but it's not tied to only fire summons, obviously, so it could be literally any summon. Cast it for -6 now. Just bear in mind that if you are doing these things where you're killing like your own Terra, whilst Terra isn't on the field, your summons in your break zone aren't protected, at which point your opponent could then be trying to remove them through certain effects. So just make sure, if you're suspicious of them being able to remove summons that you're trying to get back to your hand, just bear that in mind. Bahamut. So, from Opus 21, during your turn, the cost required to cast Bahamut is reduced by 2. So, as I mentioned earlier, getting a 4-cost summon still makes it pay 1. But with Bahamut, you know, play Terra onto the field, just grab the Bahamut, it's -2 because of Terra's effect, and it's -2 because it's your turn. You can then cast this for only 1 CP, which is pretty damn good. If you've got Muti on your backup line, that would then reactivate when you cast a Bahamut. So technically you've paid 0 for this, which is pretty nice. Right, now we've got a bit of a longer chain here. So when Fang attacks, during this turn, the cost required to cast your next card named Bahamut is reduced by 2. Obviously that combos nicely with Terra's effect, because that means you can get like -2, -4. Now, obviously, Fang can make a summon become 0. Terra stops it from becoming 0, so they kind of work against each other there, but still, -4 off of a Bahamut ain't too bad. Now, in Opus 23, we also have the other Fire Legend, Caius. When he enters the field, you may search for one card named Bahamut, add it to your hand. During this turn, the cost required to cast your next card named Bahamut is reduced by 5. So, you have Terra come onto the field, you have Caius come onto the field. That is expensive, I'm well aware of that. But you get a summon back to your hand through Terra, you get a summon search to your hand through Caius. Then you can cast either a Bahamut for -5, or a Bahamut for -7 technically, or just a summon for -2. You see where I'm going with this. You are then attacked with Fang. It's now -2 again, so you could cast a Bahamut for -9. I mean, if you wanted to, you could. Now, obviously, with Terra making it so that it has to pay 1, you have to pay 1 for this Bahamut. But I've already mentioned, if you've got Muti in your deck, then he reactivates when you cast a Bahamut anyway, so you get to cast good old-fashioned Opus 1 Bahamut for 1 CP still. 2 lots of 9? No, 2 lots of 10k something and remove them, hopefully. I'm not saying you should run that card, but it is funny. Unit. So, we've been talking mostly about fire here, but Terra works nicely with any element. Anything where you're going to be casting lots of summons, and obviously that's mostly water a lot of the time. Water and wind love their summons, so being able to, well, actually every element does, so that's a stupid phrase, but water specifically with things like Volker, being able to just constantly ditch summons. But if you're running Terra, you're probably not running Volker, so yeah, whatever. Yeah, Terra makes it reduced by 2. Una, as standard, makes things reduced by 1 as well, so again, quite nice. So you want to be focusing on your 4 CP plus summons here, but that's a lot of good summons. You got Leviathan, the most recent Opus 21 Leviathan, most recent Opus 21. What am I saying? So during your turn, the cost required to cast Leviathan is reduced by 2. So with Terra entering the field, get Leviathan back to hand is now reduced by 4. Una is then reduced by 5. So you cast this Leviathan for 1 CP. Choose one forward, put it at the bottom of his own deck, then you may play a forward of cost 2 or less from your hand onto the field. That's quite nice in my opinion. Similar to the old Opus 2. It's Opus 2, Opus 3, Phoenix, the one I talked about earlier. Apart from you have to have the card in hand, but being able to put something to the bottom of your opponent's deck is delicious, and, you know, works nicely with Unit and Terra together. Mind Flayer as well is a hilarious card, because it's 1 CP, you get to look at 2 cards, and then cast that card for free as well. I mean, yes, you still have to consider the fact that Mind Flayer is a card from hand, but still, that doesn't really matter. So, yeah, 1 CP, 3 CP, whatever you want to call it, looking at opponent's 2 cards, and then potentially just removing a really good card as well. Don't even play the card, just remove it. That's alright by my books. Please? Do something? There we go. Yeah, so Realm. So when she enters the field, select one of the 2 following options. The one I'm focusing on is during this turn. Then if the next summon of cost 4 or less cast from your hand is put from the field to the break zone and removed from the game instead, then cast it again without paying the cost. So obviously she is water ice, but you know, fire has many easy ways of generating ice if you wanted to, or water has means of generating fire, so if you are actually in ice water, then you could also play Terra through that as well. I'm basically referring to the different colour fixing Moogles, but still, being able to play Mind Flayer for like 1 CP, and then Realm to play it a second time, again for only 1 CP is bleh. Man in Black. Yeah, just getting those summons back and constantly recasting them, but with Terra making it so that 1, they can't be removed through your opponent's effects, but 2, making it so that those summons can potentially be cheaper as well. Because there are some cards when they state when they are cast from hand or played from hand, costs changed, but Terra is simply, during this turn, the cost required to cast your next summon is reduced by 2. It doesn't state where the card has to be cast from. So even if it's cast, removed from game, from break zone, whatever, it's still removed. It's still -2. So yeah, if you've got something like, I don't know, actually, there's some really awkward. I guess you've got lots of Odins that could be reduced in cost as well, but basically making it so that the summons are cheaper, so that you can trigger both effects, Man in Black's effect and the summons effect as well. And Kryl, so this was a learning curve for me, something I wasn't aware of, but also quite interesting. So obviously Kryl works nicely with Terra because you can choose to summon in your opponent's break zone, and if Terra has entered or just died, then that summon would be -2 CP to cast as well, which is quite nice. However, let's look at Kryl's text for a second. Pay 1, or either entry or the action ability, pay 1 dull, choose one summon in either player's break zone. You can cast it as though you owned it this turn. If you cast it, remove that summon from the game after use instead of putting it in the break zone. So initially, I assumed that Kryl wouldn't work on Terra, because Terra's text is, all summons in your opponent's break zone cannot be removed from the game by your opponent's summons or abilities. However, Kryl does work against Terra. So if I had played a Terra and my opponent has a Kryl, what Kryl actually does is she looks at a summon, casts it, and I wasn't aware of this, but the stack is actually a zone where a summon goes when it's been cast. That is the only thing that actually sits in a stack in terms of a zone. Obviously you've got action abilities and entry effects and all these different types of effects that do go on the stack and enter the stack, but a summon actually goes to the stack. That's where it is while you're waiting for it to resolve. So when Kryl casts a summon from the break zone, it leaves the break zone into the stack, and then when it's resolved, it then gets removed from game. So even though you have Terra saying, oh, this can't be removed from my break zone, she isn't removing it from the break zone. She is casting it from the break zone and then removing it when it would be put back into the break zone. So bear that in mind, kids, because that was just, a moment for me. I didn't know that was a thing. I had no idea that the stack was a zone. So yeah, things that are like choose a summon in your opponent's break zone, remove from the game, obviously wouldn't work. I think there's the Ice Edgar, choose a card in your opponent's break zone, remove from the game just for a dull. That wouldn't work, for example. But Kryl would, because she's casting it, which is then it's going to the stack, so it's being removed from the stack almost. Yeah, good to know, eh? And that is it, folks. That is Terra Opus 23. I probably am going to be getting to Hythandaleus, or whatever it's called. I haven't played that much of Final Fantasy 14 yet. And Emmet Selch, but I'm just biding my time with those cards. I'm going to be present at the Brotherhood... what even? Is it Last Chance tournament, I think, in London on the 24th and 25th of August, so be cool to see you there. But my point is that I'm going to reserve judgment on that card, or those cards, after that, and see how prevalent it is. But I think it's safe to say those cards are stupid, but I'm getting off topic. Terra! I really like some of the cards in Fire this set. I think they're really fun. I am going to do a set overview at some point, but I'm actually not going to do it as soon as sets come out. I want to play the cards first and say, actually, I think these cards are this, that, whatever. And Terra, I think, is a really fun card. Unfortunately, I pulled none of her, so I'm going to have to go searching. But Fire, I think, got some really cool stuff with Caius, Terra, Nalaga. I think it's Nalapa, something like that. Anti-summon card. I really like the new Kefka as well, in terms of the artwork. It's weird, it's not everyone's jam, but fair enough. But yeah, this new set has got a wide variety of cards, and some which are just like, oh, that's a bit poo, and then you got some which are just like, ooh, that's spicy. So yeah, lots of fun to be had. But anyway, let me know what you guys think of Terra. What have you put her with? Have you taken her outside of the traditional elements? You put her in, like, I don't know, ice or something. There are some really cool things you can do with this card, and I'm really excited to see what people can make with her. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, guys. Stay safe, be lucky, and I'll see you maybe in London, if not in the next video.